Hey everyone, welcome back to the lookout. It's the last day of June and fire season's kind of starting a little bit here and there. It's hot, got a little lightning now. Southern California's starting to get some fires. So we're going to do a quick kind of situation status for California. We're going to look at some weather outlooks. We're going to check out the current weather. We're going to look at current conditions on some webcams. We're going to check out real briefly the fires in SoCal. And we're going to talk a little bit about this firefighter assassination in Idaho, northern Idaho. So welcome back, everyone. I want to thank our sponsors. We've got QTAC, longtime sponsor of the Lookout. Make great pickup truck skids with water axe pumps on them. And Firebox, builders of really versatile skid steer attachments for firefighting. Alright, so we're taking the shutters off the Lookout. One of my jobs when I worked for the Forest Service was to help open the lookouts at the beginning of the year and winterize them at the end of the year. So that's what we're doing around here. Taking the shutters off, making sure all this stuff still works before we get into fire season. Current situation in Northern California. And if you haven't looked at our last video on tools for prediction of fire season, please check that out. But looking at our North Ops Coordination Center predictive services, today's map shows some red across kind of the center far north of California for lightning hazard. Shows the rest of no real triggers for high risk conditions, and then if you move south, low risk in kind of central part of the state right now. So why are we high risk in NorCal today? Some lightning forecasts with the potential for some of it to be dry. Moving out till tomorrow, still have that lightning risk. Wednesday, dry or moderate risk. And as we move in through Wednesday and Thursday, there's potential for these storms to become more wet, and so they're not really super worried about if new lightning fires get started. It's not like we're going into winds or super dry weather. So so there's some risk of some new starts today, but rest of the week it drops down to kind of more moderate to low risk. Looking at the fuels and other information in this summary, high risk today for abundant lightning across dry fuels in northwestern mountains and northeastern California. Nocturnal lightning possible tonight into tomorrow morning, and additional abundant lightning Tuesday and Wednesday. But they say organized lightning threat will expand in aerial cover Tuesday and Wednesday, but the atmosphere is gradually going to moisten and we'll get wet and dry results. And there'll be some breezy winds from the northeast today, continuing through the week. But basically they say that in the big picture, moisture later in the week is kind of lowering the threat of large fires. In the fuels potential here, we talk about the dead fuel. Grasses are cured below about 3,000 feet, and so we can have grass fires now. However, as we've talked about before, those are generally going to be wind driven and not very difficult to fight for the most part. Some interesting things happening this time of year with the flammability of brush. The sage on the east side is dry, critically dry below 4,500 feet. But the manzanita and chamise are not really as flammable right now. Manzanita is generally moistening, and it will reach its peak level of moisture in the next week or so, just because we're hot and the plants still have plenty of moisture in the soil, and they're drawing all that moisture up to grow for the year. So in places with the heavy manzanita, not as worried about fire risk. I use a tool called Radar Scope quite a bit. It's kind of a nice dashboard for National Weather Service, seeing their radar satellite data in kind of high resolution. Also shows lightning strikes. and you can switch around and check the different places. So right now this is the Reno. And this is on top of Mount Rose, so this sees really well up into kind of northeastern California. We also use Orville, aka Beale, which doesn't see up into the mountains very well. The mountains here in the front country kind of block your view up into the Modoc Plateau. They tend to put these things in nice high places that have a good view into one place or another. So it's handy to look around, like, you know, this Medford one up, I think on Mount Ashland. It also picks up northeastern California really well. So we see we've got pockets of some lightning storms moving through northeastern California, both from Redding or from Reno and from Medford satellites. And then you can also look on here and it'll give you storm accumulation. So that's handy to see if there's any rain that's coming with those strikes. Hey, I'm streaming. So if you look at the Medford radar here, you can see that there's strikes showing up in northwestern mountains, kind of the Salmon River watershed out towards Orleans, but they are showing a bit more precip with that. Another view on that from Eureka, and same thing, you see that there is some moisture in there, and so what we look for is these little lightnings happening outside the areas where you're seeing that moisture. But it's nice to see some moisture. A nice kind of backup for radar scope is then to start looking at the webcams. We talked about these the other day. So like for the Mendocino, there's a little bit of buildup showing out here on the radar scope. You can see that that was kind of down here south of Ruth Lake. And so down here, you can see one big thunderstorm out here that they're showing kind of south of Ruth Lake that's still kind of building. And this is a view from Ruth Lake proper, so if you look south, you can see that storm still building pretty strongly. Here we are, this is Anthony Peak down by Covelo, and that also gives you another perspective on this bigger storm kind of up to the north, but not a huge up here to the north. Not a ton going on yet on the Mendocino. There's some sort of a grass fire or range fire out by Herlong, and the cams have been looking at that. It doesn't look like it's doing very much. There's a nice perspective here from Black Mountain to see what's going on in the Northern Sierra. Don't see a lot going on there in the Northern Sierra. There's some what's kind of cool about these images is if you pan around here, it shows you the vector on the map up here. So sometimes you can kind of cross those, and oftentimes these clouds, they're a lot farther away than they look. So here we're looking up kind of up towards Fall River Mills, MacArthur, and then the last perspective, we have a mountain. We're looking here from Blue Mountain out by Alturas. So you can kind of cross those directions and see that there's some stormage kind of maybe out by Fall River Mills. Yeah, maybe a little more like Big Valley. So those are just some of the tools we use here to get an idea of where things are cooking. This is a camera we use a lot up by Wairika. Same thing, you can kind of just look at your local geography, and this is, like I said before, sometimes we know where there's lightning strikes, but we can't tell as well where the rain is. So it can be really handy to check out a few different perspectives from the webcams to find out where the storms are wet. Moving to SoCal, there's a few fires going down there that so far none of them have been big enough that they've ordered an incident command team as far as we know. And these aren't really extraordinary in the scheme of Southern California fires. This fire here is the Wolf Fire, and this fire's 2,400 acres after almost 24 hours. When was that mapped? It's probably quite a bit bigger by now, but these are areas that burn a lot in the Riverside unit, and so far not they're burning in fairly sparse areas. This over here is called juniper fire. I don't have a lot of intel on these. It sounded like there was some new starts that were happening on the juniper fire. Maybe arson running around. I don't know. But 3 decent-sized fires in SoCal that have actually gotten flowing, but none of them really doing a whole lot of craziness. Probably get better intel on watch duty than anywhere else for that stuff. So while we're in Google here, I want to fly up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Yesterday there was here's Coeur d'Alene. Just want to show kind of the area where this thing happened. City of Coeur d'Alene. There's a park here that's kind of the local park where everyone goes. And yesterday there was arson, and then when the firefighters arrived, many of you already heard that 2 firefighters were sniped and killed right away, another wounded, and then they found a shooter, they think. I don't have anything to say about this except that looking on Twitter, Facebook, etc., there's a lot of real misinformation. There's people posting photos of the family that may or may not be the family. There's people posting this guy's are Russian. There's all the usual really polluted information sphere that we're used to now, unfortunately. And so I'd just say, please don't share propaganda. Please don't share information that may or may not be true. Please don't just share information because it meets your political view. Everyone's scrambling to pin, like everything, everyone's scrambling to pin this on the other side. All we know right now is some firefighters were shot, and the truth is going to be harder to find than a Twitter search, a Facebook search. So please don't share bullshit information. Also, they're circulating the command channel audio all over the place. CNN, Fox News, playing this dramatic, highly dramatic audio from the guy that was on the ground getting shot at. Please don't share that. And please, in general, a rule of thumb in wildland is don't share information about tragedy right off the bat, because no one wants to find out that their dad or uncle or friend got shot on Twitter or on Facebook. So I'd say take care of your mental environment. Don't listen to this traumatic stuff if you don't have to. I know it's dramatic and it makes for ratings and stuff, but please don't share what we call the incident within the incident, that kind of stuff, wildly on social media. So Randy Boucher says, how's juniper fire looking in SoCal? Anyway, that's all we got to say about northern Idaho. We'll find out more as it goes on. Either way, extremely effed up situation. Don't make it worse by hyping it, sharing the politics. Go look at juniper here. Like I said, watch duty is probably more up to date than this perimeter I got. Juniper fire. I look a lot at what's called the wildfire hot list. They say there's some houses on fire a quarter mile south of Louise incident on Mountain Ave. We don't have any real good intel right now on this fire, other than these perimeters that were flowing earlier today. This is the wolf, sorry. Flying by the seat of our pants here. Juniper, I think there's juniper over here. Right. So as we said before, fairly sparsely populated area. Riverside is a trip in just that There's a lot of rural areas out there, a lot of kind of weedy, grassy, flashy fuels, hot and dry. So this is one of those places in the world where fires happen often. They're blown by the winds. They burn people's houses, and a lot of the damage that gets done is preventable if you mow your grass and take care of everything that you need to take care of when you live in a hot, dry, windy, weedy place. People say, how bad do you think this fire season's gonna be? I don't know, man. I think the thing to keep in mind in California is that we're only ever like one big major ignition event away from a big fire season, and that June, July, August, oftentimes what determines whether or not fires get away from us or how many fires are burning at once. As long as we've only got a couple fires burning at once, we got incredible firefighters, incredible aviation here, and fires get put out. When we start having multiple ignitions, wind, and high temperatures, that's when things get really dynamic. So like the park fire last year, super dry for 10 days, big steady wind, fires off to the races, and then once it hit that critical threshold of, it got away and ran for days, then it becomes a campaign. So the things to look out for as far as fire season is extended periods of really hot weather, and I don't mean just like 100, I mean like 108, 110 for a week, and then winds. And so the big thing about how our fires work here is our normal pattern is that we've got really stable weather, and it stays hot and dry, and there's not a lot of wind because we're under kind of like a big area of atmospheric high pressure. And then that, you call that a ridge, and that ridge of high pressure, at some point it breaks down, and that means that low pressure moves in from the ocean. Things are more turbulent, things are all in flux, just movement in the atmosphere becomes unstable. That's when you can have critical fire weather. So if it's hot and dry and it's going to be that way for weeks, oftentimes that's not when we have our big fire. We have our big fire when that hot, dry period ends and you have a transition in the weather. So the forecasts are pretty good at calling that stuff out. The sites I've talked about, if you check out our weather forecast the fire season video, it talks about that stuff. Right now we're in kind of what we call kind of like just, there's little initial attacks happening here and there. We don't have the conditions, we don't have the winds, we don't have the low fuel moistures right now for fires to grow explosively. Still a couple weeks out on the fuel moisture. Come late July, that's when those things line up. June, less common for us to have fires that really take off. So right now we're kind of feels average, and we never know what's going to happen. So that's my answer to how the fire season is going to be. What are we working on here to look at? We're working on a 1 year after the park fire video. We're looking at kind of the effects of the fire around here. I'll jump to the map. Here in Chico, park fire. Don't have it loaded up, but the park fire burned all of this country out here. So we're looking at that right now. Just checking out the conditions post-fire. You can see on some of this imagery here, you can actually, Google's already updated. So this is Forest Ranch, and you can actually see in these images, you can see like the retardant that got dropped to save these houses on the ridge above Chico Creek Canyon. So yeah, there's a lot of great resources right now that have become available since the fire, and we're putting those all together into a video that describes the first like week of the fire. And we'll be looking specifically kind of at the fire effects in the eastern side of the fire. We did a special after the park fire was winding down of the west side of the fire. This time we're going to look a little more at like what's happening above Chico. We're also working on our video series, our SoCal video series. We just got our first cut back from our first episode of that trip. And that's going to be all about fire hazards in LA. That's going to come out in kind of second or third week of August. And so July is busy putting together all those pieces. We've got a production team that's putting together about an hour's worth of documentary about LA. And just getting ready for fire season. So appreciate your guys' support. We'll keep doing these. We'll keep you posted if anything big pops. If these SoCal fires kind of end up being anything unique, we'll be covering those also. But trying to finish up other projects before fire season gets crazy, because we'll be here broadcasting. Thanks for all your support, and check out the Lookout webpage. We've been updating stuff on there. We've got been on a couple podcasts in the last year or so. The Hotshot Wake Up, we talked about fuels management. Did something on a podcast about the LA fires that I haven't found yet, but it's up there. And but if you just come and check out the Lookout, this is where we put our stuff. We did a report recently on fire in roadless areas, because that's kind of a hot topic. And I already mentioned this one about predicting fire season. Talked some videos about burning we've been doing. So Lookout website's the best place to kind of get up to speed, and also check out our advertisers. So on that note, play our advertisers again, and boogie out. Thanks QTAC, thanks WaterAxe, and thanks Firebox. Firebox is we're working on a special on them too. Really cool product. Thanks all.